Hello there, everybody out there on the internet. This is a guided tour of my latest album, Notes from a Holocaust. And I'm going to just play tracks from the new album, the final mixes in various video formats. So it should be a good experience for folks who are watching on video or for folks who are listening afterwards to the podcast version of this broadcast. If you have any comments or questions anywhere along the line, I should be able to see them, and they are welcome. If you're watching live, obviously. If you have comments or questions afterwards, then that's also welcome, but I can't answer them live as we go, unless we do some fancy time traveling. And if you are, if you want to share this broadcast on whatever platform you're watching on, that is most welcome. And we're broadcasting right now on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So I'm just going to jump right in here and start with the first track, and which is one I wrote on October 13th. This album, Notes from a Holocaust, is an effort to bear witness to the genocide of the Palestinian people that has been happening since October. And all the songs on the album were written between October 13th and December 31st, although I'll do some more. I'll bring you a little bit more recent material as well, doing the whole thing in order. For those of you who have or have not been keeping abreast of the horrors that are happening every day, the hundreds killed every day, the many more who will be dying of famine and disease, or who already are, then whether you've been keeping track of this stuff or not, then hopefully my musical version of events will be of interest in various ways. And if you have not been keeping track, then I believe that I can give you a good introduction to what's been happening. And the first song on the album, the first song I wrote in the series, is called "As the Bombs Rain Down," and I'll bring it to you now. And it is it's a song that tries to describe the horrors that were actually happening, as opposed to the version of reality, the so-called Israel-Hamas war, as they keep on calling it on BBC, which is quite a thing to call a genocide of the Palestinian people. Israel-Hamas war, whatever that is supposed to be. But that's not what happened. What's happening? What's happening is a genocidal bombing campaign, and this is the first song on the album. Hear the drones above your head. What were the last words that she said before she joined the thousands dead as the bombs rain down? See the fire in the sky, hear all of the children cry. The tower falls from way up high as the bombs rain down. See the dust rise everywhere. Once it was a building there, then it crashed down from the air as the bombs rained down. Twisted bodies all around, the never-ending buzzing sound, the earthquake shaking all the ground as the bombs rained down. Shattered camps of refugees, necklaces of ancient keys, smell the burning olive trees as the bombs rain down. See the homes, apartment blocks, see the mosques reduced to rocks, feel the awe and feel the shock as the bombs rain down. See the sewage in the street, mixed with blood beneath your feet, before the sonic boom repeats as the bombs rain down. See the darkness of the night, no power for the lights, but the explosions are so bright as the bombs rain down. Nothing left but rubble strewn, nothing rising but the moon, but the next one's coming soon as the bombs rain down. Hear the politicians say there's nothing here to see today. We're punishing Hamas this way as the bombs rain down. Hear the drones above your head. What were the last words that she said before she joined the thousands dead as the bombs rain down? And each of these songs I recorded here in my living room. Well, with most of them, I recorded here in my living room in Portland, and then I sent them on to Chet Gardner in Hawaii to do all his studio magic to them, and I'll add the instrumentation that you can hear if you were, paying attention to that, and this next song was actually recorded in Denmark when soon after I wrote it, and it's I think the only song that has Kamala Emanuel singing with me because we were together when I wrote it, and otherwise everything was written and recorded here in my living room where Kamala is not. This is the second song. The story begins, they'll say, in the fall of 23, when the inmates in the prison camp broke free, attacking military targets, 400 soldiers dead. If you listen to survivors, so many of them said most others who were killed died during the fight as the army came in, destroying everything in sight, smashing down the buildings upon fighters, upon kids. All the evidence suggests that's exactly what they did. And then the Air Force took no time at all to bomb hospitals and churches and to make the towers fall. The Western media just repeats the lies, while every minute or so another child dies, buried beneath the rubble of homes and schools and playgrounds, crushed just seconds after hearing the deafening sound of bombs exploding everywhere underneath the rock slide. Around the world, people shouting, "Stop the genocide!" At least 10,000 killed in just the first 4 weeks. They killed 5,000 children to bomb them, and they seek. But what's happened up to this point will pale in compare with the gravity of what I'm about to share. With more than 1 million children, it seems impossible to think the IDF wants no one to have anything to drink. They're bombing water tanks, they're beside the ocean side. Around the world, people shouting, "Stop the genocide!" They walled off the ghetto almost 20 years ago, sealed it off on all sides to throttle off the flow of what might go in or out, like things to drink or eat, medicine or people or necessities to meet the needs of 2 million trapped beneath the bombs, beneath the chemical weapons, burning skin like napalm, beneath all the bunker busters the U.S. has provided. Around the world, people shouting, "Stop the genocide!" The world watches on in outrage and in fear as the latest war to end all wars is here. Like the most deadly game of chess, the U.S. Navy in the harbor, as if to dare anyone to try to stop the slaughter, as the facts on the ground are more dire by the second. If we look into the future, how will this be reckoned? We can ask each other in the streets, marching side by side. Around the world, people shouting, "Stop the genocide!" All of those who wondered, what would I have done last time there was such a Holocaust as this one, are faced with the dilemma that's bursting at the seam. How to stop the madness of this Israeli regime? How to stop the killing before everybody dies? While there aren't any parents left to hear the cries of their children in the rubble just before they died. Around the world, people shouting, "Stop the genocide!" Next week on, I believe it is Tuesday, I'll be interviewing Chet Gardner. For those music geeks among you who may be interested in knowing how it is that he made relatively primitive recordings of me sound so good with all the instrumentation he added. So that song was obviously just trying to highlight the fact that there are millions of people marching all over the world calling for an end to the genocide, which you might know about if you pay attention to Al Jazeera or Instagram or X, but you would not know from most Western media coverage. The next song was I wrote, and then I was interviewed on Al Mayadeen TV in Lebanon, and one of the producers there, made a brilliant music video with the first minute of the song, and then Chet spliced the rest together. So that's what you are about to see. From the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. People have been living there as long as anybody knows, inventing math and science, how to sail where the wind blows. Poetry, philosophy, religions had their start. Lots of different peoples made up the beating heart of the land of Palestine, from Safa to Beersheba, from Jerusalem to Jaffa, from Acre to Rafah, where they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. In the wake of the disasters that had shaken all the world, a new state was declared, a new flag unfurled, and the Nakba engineered. With the map redrawn, 750,000 refugees, their homes taken, gone, occupied, invaded by those who called it theirs, where the people are forever in the crosshairs, where they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Since 1948, the diaspora has grown, within and without the occupation zone. Towns reduced to rubble while the settlements expand, taking up more and more of what's left of the land. And wherever people rise up and see fit to resist, though the colonizers say they're just terrorists, they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. The logic of the West twists the world on its head, while this genocidal slaughter leaves untold children dead. They ban protests in Berlin, say we don't want to hear about the babies in the rubble, or those paralyzed with fear as the German and American missiles kill and maim, while children wonder why we can't all just be treated the same, as they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. As far away as anything that could possibly be right, that to want a normal life makes you an anti-Semite, to live in a home that bulldozers won't destroy, where you can travel to the place where you're employed without waiting at a checkpoint where you're likely to be shot, shortening the shortened life that is the one you've got, as they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. You can hear of the outrage rising from Algiers to Jakarta at the genocidal bombing laying waste to Gaza, while in DC and Berlin the politicians shout, celebrate the slaughter as they claim beyond a doubt these marchers in the streets are filled with hate. They must be, since they're marching against a genocidal state, and they dream of the day when Palestine is free, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Incidentally, for those who are listening from somewhere on planet Earth in the parts of the world where I frequently travel to and will be traveling to over the course of 2024, just a brief non-commercial announcement for anybody who likes these songs and wants to hear them live. I will play happily for free at protests, and I'll be doing concerts, and I have lots of free dates for other concerts in the regions where I have plans. Just briefly, I'll just tell you where I'm going. I'm playing in Portland, Oregon on Saturday evening, and then Southern California on the 28th and 29th. Then I go to France, got a couple of gigs in France in early February, where I'll be making a recording with Kamala and a whole bunch of other wonderful musicians. And then England, I'll be there for Julian Assange's court trials at the Royal Courts on the 20th and 21st of February, and doing other gigs around London and elsewhere in England. And later February, late March, early April, I'll be in Massachusetts and New York. June, July, I'll be in Australia during that time for a month, traveling all over the place between Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne, Adelaide, as well as Perth. Got lots of free dates there too. And then November, spending most or all of the month in Scandinavia, where I have not yet booked a single gig, but I plan on having lots of them. That's the general gist of the 2024 plan for the Notes from a Holocaust World Tour. And if you go to davidrovics.com/tour, you can read more about that, and all these songs and videos you can find at davidrovics.com/Palestine, as well as the new album. Early in the genocidal bombing campaign of Israel against Gaza, the doctors that were still able to work in rapidly decreasing numbers by the day, as the hospitals were being bombed intentionally by the Israelis, as they arrested and killed medical workers and hospital administrators, etc. Early in the war, the doctors were writing on the bodies of many of their patients the acronym WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. For 6 weeks now the bombing has continued. Every few minutes another child dies, crushed without warning beneath the rubble of their homes. And that's where her body lies. And those who are pulled out from the carnage, and who may just live to see another day, may first meet a doctor with a marker, who will inscribe 5 letters down to say, writing on the bodies of survivors, an acronym for anyone to see. WCNSF, Wounded Child with no surviving family. Entire families missing from the register, since they all lived and slept in the same tower block that generations shared. Now it's just a street with a name. That last month had a row of buildings that used to be alive with children playing. Now a doctor scrawls on an armless boy as his parents still beneath the rubble decaying, writing on the bodies of survivors, an acronym for anyone to see. WCNSF, Wounded Child, with no surviving family. See the lifeless legs dangling at an angle that tell you exactly how they died. One moment they were laying on a mattress. The next one, the building opened wide as a 1-ton missile made in California was dropped upon it, and this is how. It became a grave for a whole extended family, which is what it is now, as they're writing on the bodies of survivors, an acronym for anyone to see. WC NSF, wounded child with no surviving family. The U.S. Navy guards the Mediterranean to make sure nobody intervenes, with the bunker busters smashing down the buildings, each passing hour another horrifying scene of living children crying for their mothers as they limp past mountains of the dead to the hospital that's also being bombed, to the school that's now a sea of red, as they're writing on the bodies of survivors, an acronym for anyone to see. WC NSF, wounded child with no surviving family. Wounded child with no surviving family. Wounded child with no surviving family. And then there was the farcical notion of a humanitarian pause in the course of a genocidal bombing campaign to allow the civilians that you're intentionally targeting to eat a little food and have a little health care before you resume slaughtering them. This was the next song in the series that I wrote, Humanitarian Pause. But I'll just take a moment to share one of the comments, because I can see the comments that come in on the various platforms, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, X, or whatever, Twitch. And here's one from Facebook from Owen O'Flaherty, driving in the pitch of night in Ireland with Dave on the speakers. Nothing better. Thank you. I hope that's true. There might be other things that are better, but if you're going to be driving across Ireland at night, then that's, I think listening to a good concert, that's the way to go, and one of the benefits of the internet. And this I'll do the next song on the album, and the next song I wrote during the course of these horrific events, Humanitarian Pause. After targeting emergency responders, after blowing up the water tanks and fuel, after bombing all the hospitals and ambulances, after blowing up the mosques and the schools, after bombing all the camps, north and south, the camps of new and former refugees, after fighter jets with bunker buster missiles, after Navy ships shelling from the seas, now they'll take a little break from slaughtering the children. Then they'll do it all over again.
bombing all the solar panels, after blasting apart every street, after leveling apartment blocks, turning them to dust, when might they think the bombing is complete? After blowing up the churches and the parliament, after killing families in their cars, after killing families walking down the road with nothing in between them and the stars, now they'll take a little break from slaughtering the children. Then they'll do it all over again. Bombing their own prisoners, beneath the missiles dying there alone. Who knows what might be their plan of attack as they kill off so many of their own. After keeping food and water from the people, after making sure all the injured die, along with all the babies in the incubators, as everywhere the world wonders why, as they'll take a little break from slaughtering the children, then they'll do it all over again. After targeting emergency responders, after blowing up the water tanks and fuel,
and there were news. Well, there was a lot of sort of punditry on some of the more radical or real news outlets speculating about some of the more. I mean, because people kept on talking about like after the war, like there's some kind of a set routine for how you do it after a war, like after you completely destroy the homes of people living in all these cities and just you kill 1 or 2% of the entire population, or what, you know. I mean, and then what? You starve them, and then after the war, when the war hasn't ended, it was ridiculous talking about after the war, and you know what Arab countries are going to fund the reconstruction, all this kind of nonsense. You know, and nobody knows what's happening after the war. But other people started speculating about, well, maybe after the war, long after the war, after the genocide, as with other genocides, we'll then have museums like the Native American Museum and the Holocaust Museum to share with people out there what the Palestinians used to be like.
In the Congress and the Bundestag, you'll see them wring their hands and say how they wish in hindsight they had tried to understand, how they wish they'd seen the warning signs and heard the generals speak and believed them when they talked about the vengeance they would wreak, how they should have known this was not idle conversation, how they should have listened harder when they said elimination. Yes, once it's all too late and the graveyards are all filled, once the last Palestinians killed. On Manhattan Island, in the halls of the UN, the whole world will come together to say never again. They'll open a museum full of relics of the past before those who used to live there resisted to the last. We'll look at pictures of the rubble with the dead limbs poking through. The viewers will shed a tear and wish the leaders knew before the war ended in the way Ben-Gvir had willed. Once the last Palestinians killed. In the parliament they'll say perhaps we should have listened, instead of purging Europe's biggest party of internal opposition, should have paid attention To the millions in the streets, to those massive crowds around the globe voting with their feet. Should have read the signs, should have listened to their words instead of denouncing all the talk of genocide as just absurd. Should have looked at the pictures of the bodies charred and grilled once the last Palestinians killed. When that last tower block was flattened, in the days before the last bakery was bombed, in this total war when there were still kindergartens, when the hospital still stood, this would have been the time to question if we should have been sending all those weapons instead of barring them complete. If instead of cheering on the evil enemy's defeat, we might have asked if there was anywhere left for flour to be milled once the last Palestinians killed. When the project is complete and they make the desert bloom, once they've finished turning cities into tombs, once the dead are out of sight and buried in the ground, once the rubble has been bulldozed and no one hears the sound of dying children screaming from somewhere down below, once the shopping malls are gleaming and no one needs to know how many babies' bodies are in this soil that we've tilled, once the last Palestinians killed. Once the last Palestinians killed. Once the last Palestinians killed.
All the different UN agencies very soon after the bombing began, when the sewage started backing up in the streets and they had bombed the sewage refineries and all that, and there was no electricity. I mean, this kind of stuff has all happened multiple times before, although not nearly on this scale. But Israel always likes to destroy sewage refineries and all that. But this time, of course, it's so much worse, and all the UN agencies, the WHO and all the others, began warning in all kinds of press conferences that you could see on Al Jazeera and not on the Western media, which ignores the UN. But you could see all these press conferences of all these folks, including right up to the Secretary General, saying this is a genocide, and the next thing that's going to kill far more people than the bombardment, as savage as it has been, is the famine and disease. And so I wrote the song Famine and Disease, and I'll just, and I'm going to play you a video for those who are watching in video form. I'll play you a video which a anonymous Iranian filmmaker who has made, you'll be seeing several of his videos over the course of this guided tour of the album. And this is and I'd like to encourage anybody with the skills out there to make videos out of any of these songs, because that gets them out there. If they're good videos, that gets them out there much more. And this song has been used among other tools to try to get the airdrop for airdrop for Gaza campaign trending on X. And here's Famine and Disease.
In the places they report it, if you listen to the news, you'll hear the press conferences and the words they choose to describe the facts on the ground. In the Gaza Strip, you can hear the measured phrases, see the trembling lips, uttering words so rarely spoken, eyes open wide as one official after the other speaks of genocide. From the head of each department, you can hear the powerless pleas. The next wave of the carnage will be famine and disease. As the fighter jets rain missiles down from way up in the sky, as the tower blocks collapse with each mission that they fly, as the hospitals are targeted along with everything, as the cameras show us the apocalypse they bring. With no buildings, with no homes, when no structure remains, once it's all been leveled by the ships and tanks and planes, every medical practitioner around the earth agrees the next wave of the carnage will be famine and disease. As the Congress writes a blank check to facilitate the slaughter, Biden says he told them to let in the food and water, but they're not, and nothing happens but more destruction everywhere. White phosphorus burning, any skin exposed to air. Actions making clear that annihilation is the Israeli regime's plan for the Palestinian nation. If you survive the bombings, you don't burn or freeze, the next wave of the carnage will be famine and disease. Across the world, from Yemen to Algeria, militias on the move, from Lebanon to Syria, while on the Gaza Strip, if they have a working phone, they're trying to tell us all, don't just leave us here alone. Don't look away as this happens again, while this world still has Palestinians, because for all these refugees descended from other refugees, the next wave of the carnage will be famine and disease.
And whatever platform you might be watching on, I should be able to see any questions or comments that come in on X, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, and I got it all collected here on StreamYard. And also, I think I've got the volumes now. Halfway through the broadcast, I think I got my voice up to the level of close to the level of the videos I'm playing you. Thanks to Paula for helping produce there in the back, though she can't hear me at the moment because she's just gone out for a smoke. But let's see. The next song on the album is moving across to a part of the occupied territories of Palestine, which is geographically quite nearby to the Gaza Strip, but impossible to get to from there. Because of the Israeli long-standing surrounding of this ghetto by walls, not letting anybody in or out. And but in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank since October, there has been a massive increase in settler violence against Palestinians, and also raids by the military, in which many, many Palestinians have been killed, hundreds, and then many thousands arrested and held on no charges and under torturous conditions in the jails where they're being tortured. They torture children as a matter of course, the Israelis, every day. This is a song called The Pogroms of Judea and Samaria, which is what the colonial settler regime calls the occupied West Bank.
As the IOF is bombing Gaza into dust, stunning all the world with the vengeance and bloodlust, across the walls and watchtowers, across the occupied West Bank, smashing down the buildings are the bulldozers and tanks, where they're arresting all the children, keeping them in cells about the size of coffins, like one of the rings of hell, while settlers from Tel Aviv, Europe and America carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria. They're releasing a few prisoners as they take some more. The difference is semantic as they're breaking down your door. Settlers are soldiers, machine guns in their hands, there to burn more cars and homes on Palestinian land. There to attack children, there to burn the trees, to commit crimes against humanity in the home of the Pharisees. These men from West Jerusalem, England and Australia, that carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria. They've choked off every checkpoint, shooting as they will, executing 8-year-olds and the mentally ill, sending in the warplanes, tearing up the streets along with arbitrary torture, every effort to complete the project that began. I'll let you decide when, 1948 or 1967. It all looks so much like it used to look in Russia as they carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria. In the future, when they gaze upon the remnants, what's left of the people they might call the former tenants, the grandchildren of the pogromists might like to know, where did all the Palestinians go? They'll be too late to change the horrors here unfolding, or the future that the present here is molding, as it was when they colonized Namibia or Kenya, as they carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria. As they carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria. As they carry out the pogroms of Judea and Samaria.
And there's the Gil Scott Heron song, "The Apocalypse," the revolution will not be televised, and that he's right, of course. Especially at the time that he wrote that song, when the TV cameras were very, very much owned by a far fewer number of people. But nowadays, everything is televised somewhere, even although, this apocalypse is being televised only on platforms that you won't see on your cable, TV here in the U.S. You have to actually be a little bit more creative and actually go to the internet and type in a website if you want to watch Al Jazeera or other places where you can actually see something along the lines of what's going on there in Gaza. But this song is about they've already killed about more than 10% of the journalists in the Gaza Strip, targeting them intentionally. And we'll sing more about that later in the program, but this is a song called "The Apocalypse Will Be Televised," because it is being televised by Palestinian journalists who are being killed for doing it.
Such a carpet bombing nowhere has ever born. In the land where everyone is some version of forlorn, we watch the skies light up again, and if the one with the camera falls, another takes their place when duty calls. For the apocalypse will be televised. I'm watching it on this screen, live on camera. The Holocaust of Palestine. As hunger sweeps the enclave, cut off from every side, besieged from each direction, nowhere safe to hide. As the last drops of liquid trickle from a broken main, and waterborne diseases come as surely as the rain, the apocalypse will be televised. I'm watching it on this screen, live on camera. The Holocaust of Palestine. Watch the men stripped naked and humiliated, see the bodies in the open, hear it clearly stated by every UN worker who has managed to survive. If they don't stop, then soon there will be no one left alive. The apocalypse will be televised. I'm watching it on this screen, live on camera. The Holocaust of Palestine. hear the heads of state make their intentions known. Watch as they illustrate them, as we've all been shown, by destroying every building and leaving no water to drink. If this isn't genocide, then what is it, do you think? The apocalypse will be televised. I'm watching it on this screen, live on camera. The Holocaust of Palestine.
And they're I guess we're getting into, by this time, I think we're getting into early December. And as far as the songs, these are all songs written between October and the end of December, pretty much, on the album, Notes from a Holocaust. And which will soon be on all the streaming platforms by the end of the month. At the moment, you can find it on Bandcamp and at davidrovics.com/Palestine. One of there's two songs on the album that are about nativity scenes in Bethlehem. And the first of the two songs is about the first of the two nativity scenes that I saw a picture of in Bethlehem, which I mean, I won't describe it further because the song tells you about it. This is the first one, called Baby Jesus Lying in the Rubble.
She was looking for a place to have a baby, but with the hospitals destroyed, she headed south in a donkey cart to give birth to her little boy. She wasn't lying on a manger, no hay beneath her on the ground. She couldn't hear her newborn's cries, with the bombs exploding all around. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. Without a blanket, without a drop of water, nothing between them and the sky. The wise men from the east tried to come to see him, but they're trapped at the crossing in Sinai. There's no fuel for the water pumps, only for the drones always buzzing overhead, reminding every child there beneath them, the next moment it could be your mama dead. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. He's the Son of God, said the angel, as the babe began to shiver from the cold. There was a twinkle in his eye for a moment, before the rigor mortis took hold. This prophet who was born to save our species, this child who was the only son of all the tens of thousands killed so far. Now we can add another one. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. in the place that they were calling a safe zone. In the place that they were calling a safe zone.
I think of all the of all the work that Chet Gardner did on this album, that's my favorite of his arrangements. I just love that swelling synth sound on the choruses, and just brilliant, Chet. If you're listening, and if you aren't, either way, there's a couple of lovely comments that I have to share because not just to toot my own horn, but because just to maybe a little bit, but also because the arts are important, and a lot of people tend to forget how influential the arts can be on people's hearts and minds, and how important it is to win hearts and minds, and to do so by employing music and fiction and everything else, poetry, anything else. And this is a comment from Krista Bruin, who says, so appreciate you sharing these songs with us with video and commentary. They all speak to these tragic times of endless death and destruction. I also appreciate you making them available to share, because sharing the reprehensibility of the situation on the ground across Palestine through music and the arts generally speaks directly to the conscience and the soul in gratitude. I agree, not just in terms of my own music, but just generally. This is true of this kind of thing, and there are many other musicians writing similar songs to this. If you haven't heard the incredible hip-hop artist, poet, intellectual from London, Low-Key, gosh, you got to hear him immediately. Here's another wonderful comment, which I probably have to agree with. It seems horrible to say this, maybe your finest album ever, but as long as we agree that not having a reason for it would be infinitely preferable. Yes, indeed. It's terrible, the things that horrors can inspire. So I played you one video earlier, a music video that our anonymous, brilliant Iranian in California has made, and here's another that he made, which was the first one that he made, and just sent it to me. I hadn't been expecting it, and I was, very impressed. And this one happens to have Farsi subtitles, as he's done Farsi subtitled versions of all of or most of his videos. I've been playing you the last one I played had English subtitles, but this one is subtitled in Farsi. After so many decades of patronage with the world's greatest empire, after so many potential agreements were rejected by opening fire, after crushing so many uprisings, now they're making their ultimate bid, pursuing their final solution, just like the Nazis did. They forced refugees into ghettos, then set the ghettos aflame, murdering writers and poets, and so no one remembers their names, killing their entire families, the grandparents, women and kids, the uncles and cousins and babies, just like the Nazis did. They're bombing all means of sustaining human life at all. See the few shelters remaining, watch as the tower blocks fall. They're bombing museums and libraries in order to get rid of any memory of the people who lived here, just like the Nazis did. They're saying these people are animals, and they should all end up dead. They're sending soldiers into schools and shooting children in the head. The rhetoric is identical, and with Gaza off the grid, they've already said what happens next, just like the Nazis did.
Words of war for domestic consumption and lies for all the rest. To try to distract our attention among their enablers in the West. Because Israel needs their imports to keep those pallets on the skids. They need fuel, they need missiles, just like the Nazis did. They're using food as a weapon. They're using water that way too. They're trying to kill everyone or make them flee, it's true. As the pundits talk of after the war, like with the fall of Madrid, the victors are preparing for more, just like the Nazis did. But it's after the conquest's complete, if history is any guide, when the occupying army is positioned to decide. When disease and famine kills whoever may have hid behind the ghetto walls, just like the Nazis did. All around the world, people are trying to tell. There's a genocide unfolding, ringing alarm bells. But with such a powerful axis and so many lucrative bids, they know who wants their money, just like the Nazis did. After so many decades of patronage by the world's greatest empire, after so many potential agreements were rejected by opening fire, after crushing so many uprisings, now they're making their ultimate bid, pursuing their final solution, just like the Nazis did. Just like the Nazis did. Just like the Nazis did.
And as I've said to a couple of Israel supporters who managed to find their way to one of my social media pages and critique that song, while it becomes more and more the case that there are more and more parallels and similarities and between the contemporary Israeli regime and the Nazi regime of the 1940s. This song is talking about various aspects that are the same, and all the ones documented in the song are the same. So if anybody has a response, respond to the song, not to the title of the song. And the next song on the album is about the fact that the Israeli regime has been systematically targeting journalists and their families for assassination and slaughter since October. This is a song called "They're Killing Off the Journalists of Gaza."
Samar Abu Daqqa had his camera in his hand. He was wearing his helmet and his vest. Like Shireen Abu Akleh and so many others, he was easily identified as a member of the press. They can call the killing indiscriminate, but this isn't exactly true. When they're specifically targeting certain people in order to silence the news, they're killing off the journalists of Gaza, day after day after day after day, hoping they can hide their crimes this way. Ola Atala was slain last week, along with 9 members of her family. They were taking shelter in someone else's home after fleeing Gaza City. Ayat Kadura died alongside an unknown number thus far. Her only dream now was to be killed in one piece so they would know who we are. They're killing off the journalists of Gaza, day after day after day after day, hoping they can hide their crimes this way. Mohammed Abu Haddad with Palestine TV, dead with his family of 11. Mustawa El Sawaf was killed in another, along with his wife and 2 sons. Sari Mansour was killed in an airstrike on a refugee camp. Mohammed Abu Hasira, along with 42 relations, slaughtered with another familicidal stamp. They're killing off the journalists of Gaza, day after day after day after day, hoping they can hide their crimes this way. They hope that if they kill the messengers, they can stop the message getting out. If they can smash all of the cameras, silence everyone trying to shout out to the world that might listen and see the horrors happening beneath the Palestinian skies, the slaughter that for now we can still see with our eyes. They're killing off the journalists of Gaza, day after day after day after day, hoping they can hide their crimes this way.
And then it was later in December, I believe, if I recall. I don't have the dates written down, but when the 3 Israelis, hostages, soldiers, of course, as is rarely reported in the Western media, of the whatever the actual number of people killed in the events of October 7th in southern Israel, they often just add all the numbers together, including all the Palestinians who were killed in the fighting, and they rarely mention that 500 of the Israelis killed were soldiers, and as are many of the hostages as well. And 3 of them escaped captivity and were trying to turn themselves, or get rescued by their fellow Israeli troops, shouting in Hebrew and with their shirts off to prove they didn't have suicide vests on, and holding white flags. But none of that was good enough for the Israeli soldiers who gunned them down. And this is not an indication that the Israeli soldiers are trigger happy or making mistakes. It's an indication of their orders, of this very disciplined army's orders, which are to kill anything that moves. That's obvious. And it's just dishonesty for the Western journalists that report it as anything other than that, because these are clearly their orders, and they're carrying them out, as can be seen by anybody who's actually documenting what's actually going on, rather than being stenographers for Israeli propaganda, which is what the Western media tends to do. And this is a song about that incident called They Were Raising a White Flag.
They were raising a white flag. They were trying to be rescued. They took off their shirts so they wouldn't pose a threat, just like they were trained to do. They were shouting out in Hebrew, "We're the ones you're looking for." But the soldiers didn't hesitate. They just opened fire, because it's that kind of war. They were raising a white flag in the wrong place at the wrong time. Did they not know the rules had changed now? Existence was a crime. They were people alive in Gaza, where living is compressed between the time when you are born, the time you get a bullet in your chest. They were raising a white flag, just more evidence that proves the rules of engagement are shoot anything that moves. When you see the broken bodies of all the children dead, including the ones who were shot point blank at a UN shelter squarely in the head, they were raising a white flag moved and made a blip on the screen of their computers. Click the button, let her rip, and blow up the whole building because you saw someone survived. Because in a war like this, the enemy is anyone left alive. They were raising a white flag.
The media was talking so much about and the Israeli, when they're being mouthpieces of the Israeli press, and they're saying there's thousands of terrorists in Gaza that they're fighting, and thousands of terrorists in Yemen that they're fighting, and thousands of terrorists everywhere, thousands and thousands, and they never stop for a moment to try to explain to themselves or to us, like, what are they talking about? Which terrorists? How did so many people become terrorists? How do you have a society where so many people become terrorists? Who are these terrorists, and what motivates them? I wrote a spoken word piece, which is the next track on the album. Where did all these terrorists come from?
I heard Gallant and Austin talking to the press, looking strong for the cameras. How could they do less? With all that's arrayed against them, from the Houthi army in Sana'a, from the shores of Lebanon to the fighters in Gaza. Thousands and thousands of terrorists. Terrorists everywhere. Terrorists taking hostages, never fighting fair, dying in such numbers and then fighting back some more. After all our efforts in war after war after war, where do these terrorists come from? What is it that makes them tick? Is there something in the water that makes them a bit thick? Maybe it's the weather that gets them all so mad. Perhaps it's their schooling and the childhoods they had, raised to rage and fight, to praise the martyrs past, indoctrinated with ideas like fighting to the last. Or it could just be that Disney is too much to tolerate, and to look at Donald Duck just fills them up with hate. Maybe they're all homophobes who don't like our gay bars. They don't like us because we drink too much and have adult film stars. So many bigoted people who think we're underdressed, rebelling against the infidel bikinis of the West. Maybe they don't like our music. Maybe they just want to kill. Maybe they're brainwashed by their imams and they're following God's will. Maybe they like the Russians and they're Putin's tools. Or maybe they just believe in Sharia rule. Maybe they don't like freedom and offensive French cartoons. Maybe they don't like that story about the red balloon. Maybe they fear the future. They reject modernity. They want to keep their people in a feudal society. Perhaps they don't like HBO, or it could be CNN. Maybe they're afraid it could liberate their women. Maybe it's our sex shops, or the drugs we've legalized. Maybe that's the reason why the West is so despised. It could be that they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Perhaps they read Mein Kampf and got ideas in their heads. Maybe they're anti-Semites. They don't like Jews. Who knows where they got their violent views? Maybe they're still resentful since the Inquisition. Maybe they want to control the world, the jihadi mission. Or perhaps they just have issues anyone could understand, like invaders stole and occupied their land.
I will. The next song that I'll share with you for those who are watching in video form. This will be going out as a podcast. If you look for This Week with David Rovix, wherever you get your podcasts, or on Spotify or various other platforms, it'll be there. But at the moment, I'm broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And I can see your comments. If anybody has any comments or questions or anything like that on any of those platforms, I can see them here on StreamYard. And I will. The next song I'll do is one that our wonderful anonymous filmmaker has done a great video for. And this song has been heard quite broadly and widely across Yemeni society. I would dare say that that most people in Yemen who have an account on X have been exposed to some version of this song. And here's the video version of it. Song for the Houthi army.
Half the world's trade passes by here. So much of it goes through Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, in the port of Gaza, no ships can arrive and not a boat can leave. While every day hundreds are dying beneath the rain of missiles fired from the air. Millions of starving Palestinians on the run, being slaughtered everywhere. No safe place in the Gaza Strip. No armies coming to defend. While all over the planet, people are asking, when will this savage bombing end? How many more thousands of children can be killed while we stand by? How can we just live our lives while we watch the babies die? Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Country that doesn't have an air force, they're painting black, red, green, and white on the helicopters that they use to board the ships to show their cause is right. The president says this terrorism must stop right away, to which the Houthis respond, yes, that's right. That's exactly what we're trying to say. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Ships are going all the way around Africa to avoid the Houthi net. If Israel wants trading partners, now they might be just a little harder to get. We can blockade ports all over, north, south, east, and west. But the Houthi army are the ones who are no doubt blocking the traffic the best. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall.
And let's see here. Hopefully my sound levels are back up. They're apparently varying depending on what mistakes I'm making on technically over here. But the next song on the album is, basically in the course of all these various conversations on the media around what's happening, this genocidal bombing campaign that they usually call the Israel-Hamas war. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation about what it is that motivates people who are resisting occupation or fighting against tyranny in some form. And the Western press likes to try to turn everything into some kind of a religious conflict. It's not. And whether we're talking about Palestine or Iraq or Ireland or any number of other places, these are not religious wars. These are wars and struggles for, you could boil it down to two words, any struggle for national self-determination. And this is a song about that that I wrote in response to these conversations, called Land and Freedom.
it as a war of good and evil. You can pretend that your cause is just. You can try to say you have the moral army, and the other is just driven by bloodlust. You can say you're on the side of Western values, and the others represent barbarity. You can say your enemies want chaos, while you stand up for prosperity. You can keep on telling lies from here to kingdom come, but all that anybody wants is land and freedom. You can say they've got the wrong religion. You can say that they just want to hate. You can drop bombs upon their cities. You can say your God is great. You can speak of punishment and lessons, and how you must eliminate all the terrorists that you had to slaughter in the course of your affairs of state. You can keep on telling lies from here to kingdom come, but all that anybody wants is land and freedom. You can claim that you represent the future, and the other represents the times of old. You can talk about how liberated your people are, not like their feudal, patriarchal mold. You can talk about your love of life and liberty. You can paint a death mask on your foe. You can say what you like about your enemy, but you can't change what everybody knows. You can keep on telling lies from here to kingdom come, but all that anybody wants is land and freedom. Land and freedom. Land and freedom.
Oh, sorry, I was muted, and now I've unmuted myself, and I believe you can hear me now. Okay, so the next song on the album is in reference to Biden saying that the bombing of Gaza was indiscriminate, which is something that he only said because it was an election event that he was talking at. It was not, he doesn't care about Palestinian lives. He was saying that because he can see that his poll numbers keep on going down. The more he says he stands, uncritically with Israel. So he, at this electioneering event, he referred to the bombing as indiscriminate in passing. And then they made a big deal of that on the news, like he was being really critical. It's not true. And it's also not true that the bombing is indiscriminate. They are discriminating. They are specifically trying to kill civilians in large numbers. So that's not necessarily the same as indiscriminate. They're trying to destroy all the buildings and kill a lot of civilians. That's the point. They are using white phosphorus, which is a chemical weapon, a banned chemical weapon, which is intended to kill anybody who's breathing anywhere nearby. And so the idea, which means they are discriminating in a sense. I mean, perhaps it's a semantical thing, but they're actually targeting doctors. They're targeting journalists. So it is both indiscriminate bombing and targeted bombing, which is, I think, important to point out. And this song is called Indiscriminate.
They bombed the Jabalia camp once again, And once again those killed are all women and children. No one can keep track of the numbers of dead. Find which torso belongs to which head. Bodies are lying what's left of the streets. Sometimes someone covers them up with sheets. Surrounded by destruction wherever you look. No way to fathom all the lives that they took. They call it indiscriminate. Would be terrible if true. But they're targeting doctors, they're targeting patients, they're targeting journalists, they're targeting poets, they're targeting women, and they're targeting children too. However this slaughter might come to an end, whoever remains alive to defend the right for a people to simply exist, whoever is still here to raise their fist, will never forget the war that was waged on a city imprisoned by a gigantic cage, an air force against the civilian homes, those not protected by the Iron Dome. They call it indiscriminate. It would be terrible if true. But they're targeting doctors, they're targeting patients, they're targeting journalists, they're targeting poets, they're targeting women, and they're targeting children too. Who will be left to remember those killed when the air is cleared from the smoke that filled the whole city with poisonous gas, burning the skin off the children it passed, turning whole towers into piles of rock as those watching try to comprehend through the shock they just killed 70 members, one family this month of December. They call it indiscriminate, would be terrible if true. Children too.
I just lost my internet for a moment and it's back now. I don't know what your experience with what just happened was like, but I'd be curious to know if that was a smooth song delivery there or if it all glitched out for a few seconds. Or anyway, I'm back, and the next song on the album was written on Christmas Eve, and it is about the second nativity scene that I wrote a song about in Bethlehem, which and this song is again basically a description of the other nativity scene, both very powerful. This is called It's Christmas Eve.
It's Christmas Eve. Stores are stuffed to the gills with last-minute shoppers making sure all the stockings are filled. The Santas and elves are all busy posing for photos with kids. And 365 days ago, that's just what they did. It's Christmas Eve in front of the wall. The guy from the Salvation Army stands beside the entrance to the mall, holding his bucket with a toothless smile, ringing his bell. He'll shiver in the cold, and he'll wish us well. It's Christmas Eve. Kids rich and poor across the country anticipating, sitting on the floor, opening presents, having a party, or waiting till the morn. Some of them singing songs about a child that was born. It's Christmas Eve. People gather around in suburbs across America, you'll likely hear the sounds of pianos and guitars and choirs singing songs about Bethlehem, gathered round the nativity scene. Every year you can hear them, it's Christmas Eve, when some people dream about a world free of war and want and similar themes. People give money to charity and they hope for the best. Scenes like these unfolding all over the West. It's Christmas Eve, but in Manger Square, no strings of lights, no celebrations anywhere. And in place of the Christmas tree, where it would normally stand, there's Mother Mary with a lifeless baby in her hands. It's Christmas Eve.
And the next song on the album was another, along with Where Did All These Terrorists Come From? This is another effort at a bit of adding a bit of satirical levity to this genocide. And something I try to do regularly, actually, over the course of my career, writing about similarly horrific events, of which there have unfortunately been others. But you know, humor is an important tool to use even in the darkest of times, and I think this particular subject matter of this next song is useful to illustrate using humor, because the accusations of anti-Semitism that I and so many others involved with Palestine solidarity for many decades now or previously have been getting, are ridiculous. They're ridiculous accusations. To oppose genocide is not anti-Semitic. That's a crazy, crazy idea. It's also not anti-Semitic to, do any number of other things that I have been accused of doing over the time, such as discussing Jewish history or Jewish culture or anything like that. There's, or history of Jewish forced emigration or volunteer emigration. None of that stuff is anti-Semitic to discuss, and certainly it's not anti-Semitic to criticize Israeli genocidal and apartheid policies. And the notion that this is anti-Semitic is outrageous. And of course, it's also ridiculous to say that there's something anti-Semitic about the phrase "from the river to the sea," which is why I wrote that other song. But this song is, I've been calling it anti-Semite. People have suggested that it should be called "You must be an anti-Semite," which is the repeating phrase. And another brilliant video from our Iranian friend.
If you are a fan of democracy, if you have a problem with state theocracy, if you're having issues with minority rule or with the propaganda they teach your kids in school, you don't like invading armies bent on thievery, if you think it's wrong to steal someone else's country, there's just one explanation, though it may be getting trite. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you don't like the idea of shooting mortar rounds at kids, it must be because you just don't like the Yids. Israel bombs hospitals, if you heard that on the news. It must be because that network doesn't like the Jews. All those UN agencies crying genocide secretly still blame us for the way that Jesus died. There's just one explanation we keep within our sights. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you think free speech is a really good thing, if you fear the future that censorship may bring, if you think Mark Zuckerberg is a pawn of the CIA, if you don't believe whatever the Western leaders say, if you march and chant from the river to the sea, if you say you'll keep fighting until Palestine is free, there's just one explanation right there in black and white. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you're not a fan of home demolitions, if you've got some kind of problem with the Zionist position, it can't be that you care about humanity. It can't be just that you want some sanity. If you don't like the slaughter, you'd better just stand by. Don't speak out or else we'll all know the reason why. There's just one explanation, the one from the far right. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite.
And I love that video. And the last song on the album, which I wrote on December 31st, was a song that our videographer has not made a video out of yet, but it was a song that I wrote as a direct consequence of his very excellent advice on what kind of song I should write that would be good for a video, like in terms of the pacing and stuff. So I tried to write a well-paced song, and I think what came out was one that has a real sort of Pete Seeger kind of feel. And I if I may say so myself, I really like this song, and a lot of other people have said the same about it. There's going to be a version of it recorded by the Earl Peach's Socialist Choir. I'm not sure what it's called, the choir. It may not be called that, but anyway, his choir in Vancouver, BC, is going to make a choral recording of it, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing. And this song is called If a Song Could Raise an Army, and I wish it could.
If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth. If a song could take down borders, take down fences, make them fall, liberate all those imprisoned, kept behind the ghetto walls. If a song could stop the bombs, so the next might be the last. If a song could change the future, so it won't be like the past. If a song could be a missile fired from the Iron Dome, if it could protect the children, keep them safe within their homes, if a song could raise an army and transport it on command, take us all to Palestine to defend the Holy Land. If a song could be concrete and put to use to rebuild, if it might turn back the clock, bring back all the babies killed. If a song could be a blueprint, instructions to show us how. If a song could change the world, then let us do it now. If a us birth to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth.
That's the last official song on the album. There are a couple of bonus tracks on the Bandcamp version, but what I'm going to do now is switch to a song that I just wrote over the course of the weekend, which our wonderful Iranian filmmaker has made a video for, and I'll just talk about this song a little bit because this song called Airdrop is dedicated to the campaign that has been going on since at least Friday that I heard about it, which is airdrop aid for Gaza, the hashtag airdrop aid for Gaza. And it's been a successful campaign to get this hashtag trending on X, and it basically is what it's about in a nutshell is thanking King Abdullah and Queen Rania of Jordan for the aid drops that have been done, the airdrops that have been done, which have been, I think, 7 altogether. I believe a Jordanian French collaborative effort to airdrop tons of food and medicine, other needed things to the Jordanian field hospital in the Gaza Strip. And the campaign is about encouraging Jordan to do a whole lot more airdrops like that. And possibly in response to the campaign, just yesterday, the Jordanian field hospital was bombed by the Israeli military. It's apparently damaged seriously, but still functioning. I believe somebody was killed as well. And the song is mostly about the airlift of 1948-49 in West Berlin, and I was when I heard about this campaign to encourage the king to step up the airdrops. I thought about the Berlin airlift, and it's, I think, a relevant comparison, although there's lots of differences in the circumstances, because, of course, at the time, West Berlin was not under bombardment. It was just isolated from the rest of West Germany for certain reasons that we could get into, but the bottom line in terms of the comparison is not why West Berlin was isolated from the rest of West Germany, but how the U.S. and U.K. primarily dealt with that situation at the time. There were people within the U.S. and U.K., prominent politicians who were calling for going to war with the Soviet Union and basically moving troops into East Germany until they got into Berlin, which was actually a completely farcical idea in terms of any kind of conventional effort, so-called conventional war effort, because the Soviet Union had just ridiculous numbers more troops, but some of these American and British politicians were calling for the use of nuclear weapons against Russia, of course, in order to take West Berlin by force. But ultimately, President Truman, who had, of course, just recently been the first president or person in the world to order the use of nuclear weapons against an overwhelmingly civilian population, not once but twice, was apparently reticent to use nuclear weapons again at the time, and or to go to war with the Soviet Union. So he and others called for the airlift idea, and it was dismissed as unrealistic. Which in fairness, it may very well be in Gaza today, because there's no airport, no runway, so the kind of airlift that was done in Berlin would not be possible in Gaza. But a lot of the aid was delivered in 48, 49 in West Berlin by airdrops, not all by planes landing. A lot of it was airdrops with parachutes and all that. That can and has been done in Gaza, and Jordan has done it and without being shot down by the Israelis, apparently, so far. I don't know, what the future holds, but it seems like that any country that has the capacity to be able to do such airdrops, it's far from a low risk endeavor, but it would be at least lower risk than actually going to war with Israel, and could be a possible way to get aid in there without necessarily going to war with Israel. At least that was the theory back in the Berlin airlift, and it may or may not be a good theory now, but it seems very much worth a try. And a lot of other people think the same way I do about that, such as the people pushing this hashtag campaign, airdrop aid for Gaza. And I think it's also to put things in perspective when we're thinking about the 7 Jordanian airdrops that have happened, which involved, I think, some tons, I don't know how many tons of aid. In 1948-49, the U.S. and U.K. planes were taking off every 30 seconds and delivering between 5,000 and 20,000 tons of aid, food, medicine, fuel, to West Berlin per day. And, we can do a lot more than what's been done so far. And this is the most recent video that has been made for any of these songs by our Iranian videographer friend. And this is Airdrop.
The blockade was imposed, no one could come or go. And in order to successfully throttle off the flow of food and fuel and what's needed to survive, to keep more than 2 million people alive, the authorities limited imports to just a few tons that would be allowed to pass through, to try to break the siege on the ground. Seemed impossible until the world heard the sound. Watched the aviators streaking through the sky to try to find out how much cargo they could fly. They drafted every plane that could be flown, determined not to leave these millions alone, to be cold and hungry or else to be subsumed. They said it was impossible, an endeavor that was doomed. Every 30 seconds a plane would fly away to deliver to those trapped 5,000 tons a day. More than 2 million supplied by air alone, thousands of airdrops flown. Watch the aviators streaking through the sky to try to find out how much cargo they could fly. Planes crashed as they do, 100 people died, but the flights kept coming, no way to put aside the needs of all these people to have something to eat, to have fuel and medicine and shoes upon their feet. It was in West Berlin way back when, and it could all be done again. To save the Gaza Strip, or forever wonder why we just let all the Palestinians starve and die. Watch the aviators streaking through the sky to try to find out how much cargo they could fly.
I'll just read out a comment from Krista Brun, which is a very good one. This is a great campaign. They should have continued to drop food and supplies from all over the world from the beginning with the Israeli blockade that with the current crisis has taken a whole other level, leaving people without the most basic life-sustaining supplies of food, water, fuel, and medicine. Clearly, the U.S. and most Western powers do not believe Palestinians deserve to live in freedom with dignity. That's for darn sure. And whether the Western powers think they deserve to live at all. And of course, aside from the Berlin airlift, probably more relevant comparison that I also wrote a song about some time ago, but not recently, is the comparison between how the U.S. has reacted to the war in Ukraine compared to in Palestine. In Ukraine, they called it, von der Leyen called it a genocide as soon as there was electricity out in the winter in Ukraine, and so much more death and destruction has been wrought on Gaza by Israel. It's almost impossible to compare, and yet they still call it the Israel-Hamas war instead of the genocidal war that it obviously is. Well. We've come to near the end here, but I'll do one more video. I'll play one more video for you that Chet made actually to he also did the accompaniment, musical accompaniment, and he made a video because he liked the song so much. And this is a song I wrote in 2002, so it is not part of this series of songs written since the Israeli bombardment began in October. But it is a song about Palestine, a song that perhaps is a bit more hopeful than most of us are feeling these days, but I wrote it back in 2002, and Chet made a lovely video for it. So I will just close this broadcast with this video, and I'll just mention too that if you are anywhere in Portland, I'm playing in Portland on Saturday night, and I'm going to be in California, Southern California later this month, and February in France and England, June, late March, early April in around the Northeast, Massachusetts, New York, June, July in Australia, and August taking a trip down the coast to San Francisco and playing around California, another backyard tour like I did a year ago, and then November, another tour of Scandinavia. And if anybody wants to come to a gig or organize one, go to davidrovics.com/tour, and you can see what's planned and drop me a line. And of course, if you like this broadcast or the album, please share it with people, because the music is only going to have an impact on those who hear it. And this is a song from 2002, In One World. And thanks for listening, everybody. And this will all be in podcast form for those who prefer podcasts. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts if you look for This Week with David Rovics, or go to davidrovics.com/thisweek to get all those podcasts as well. And davidrovics.com/Palestine as well for all the Palestine-related material. And, I like that comment. I'll have to share that. Oh, August, that's a good comment too. But this is, from John in California. I hope to see you there in August. And this comment from Kevin Broaders. Hi, David. This is some of the best stuff I've ever heard you do. Love the Houthi Army song. Thank you. And now I'm singing about terrorists here in the U.S. Now the Houthi Army are terrorists, so maybe I'll get arrested for being a terrorist sympathizer again. Well, not again. They haven't never been arrested for that. Okay. This is In One World. Thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. I'll see you on the road and on the streets, I hope.
1948, I fled my village. The Stern Gang drove my family from the lands. We ran into the desert, where I've spent these decades living by my hands. Life in Haifa wasn't easy, but So much better than this hellhole with the soldiers and barbed wire and the closures and the hunger, the humiliation and the checkpoints, the machine gun fire. And each day I wonder, after Haifa, the home that we abandoned when the Zionists had won, is there a family with a child? Does its father love it as I loved my only son before the soldiers shot him down, riddled him with bullets in his back and in his head? Home in Haifa, in my house, does his father know the pain there is in an empty bed? In 1960, I fled my country, left the Tigris River for this foreign place. I had to leave home, I didn't want to, but they were rounding up the leftists and the papers had my face. And my son, a student leader, on the streets of Baghdad was nowhere to be found. So I walked through the mountains, just the shirt upon my back, knowing not where I was bound. Now here I am, this town of Haifa, in this little house, but at least I'm still alive. And each day I wonder, how is Baghdad? Would I recognize my friends if any did indeed survive? It took a long time, but I made a life here, and I wish my son could be here in this town upon the shore. I was with my wife, it was the Sabbath, when an old Arab couple knocked upon our door. We asked them in, gave them tea, 'cause that's what you do with strangers. We could see they meant no harm. We told our story, they told theirs, us of our life in Baghdad, them of their family farm, and of this house which they once lived in, where once they raised a family long before their hair turned gray, and of their son and the troopers, and of ours, who we still cry for every day. So much in common, so much gone bad, so much running and never coming home. You can hear the cards falling down, see the faces of the children forever forced to roam. And here we were in this house, fearing that tomorrow would be just like yesterday. So much resentment, so much at stake, and I really don't remember who was the first to say, in one world, in one village, in one home, let us live together. In one world, in one village, in one home, let us live together. In one world, in one village, in one home, let us live together. In one